All right, let's go ahead and get started. Pumped everyone could join. Really excited for today's session. We got old friend of mine, Mark Roberge. And to intro everyone, might be a little bit confusion. This is going to be another session where we have multiple Marks. We had Mark Bissell on a few weeks ago and got really good feedback. So we're on a rampage to get multiple Marks on the session. You let me know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But for those of you that are new to this series, my name's Mark Stoddard. I run sales and marketing here at Client Success. And we've also got our CEO on, Dave Blake. And Dave, can you hear us okay?
Yep, I'm on there. Welcome,
yep,
everybody.
He's there. Awesome. And then, of course, we have our guest of honor, Mark Roberge, former CRO at Hubspot, professor at Harvard Business School, stage 2 capital investor, author, influencer. What else? Am I missing anything, Mark?
Father, the most important one, Mark.
Father to 2 or 3
You got
boys?
it. Kai and Zane, 2 boys, 13 and 12. Remember
Nice.
the days when they were running around the office like as toddlers?
That's it. I remember it clear as day.
Nice.
So
yeah,
we're on number 3 now. So
awesome, man.
Yeah,
awesome.
Good. Well, yeah. Again, glad to have you join us. Can everybody hear us okay? Maybe just give me a quick thumbs up, yes, no, in the chat pane. Looks like all good. Yeah, looks like everyone can hear us okay. Well, cool. Again, excited to have Mark on. I've had the unique pleasure of working with Mark for a lot of years. Not only does he have a really cool story in being, I think it was employee 4, 5, whatever it was at HubSpot, he also has a lot of really cool analytical insights across not just customer success, but all things related to go to market. So sales, marketing, running freemium businesses, a ton of that stuff. So really excited to have him come and share all those insights with all of you. Just a couple things before we jump in. If this is your first time on one of our series, this is a webinar series we've been running every week since probably the middle of March. We've had a ton of influencers, thought leaders, operators, kind of all angles related to customer success. And so they've shared a ton of amazing content ranging from how to run a renewal ops team, how to become a better manager, last week we had a session on how to manage your mental health in a customer success role, really important topic right now. And so of course we have today's session with Mark on consistent customer success creation. All of the past sessions, they're on our website. I'll post a link, clientsuccess.com/webinars. After we finish up with Mark today, I'll post the recording, send it out, send out slides if you want, and it should be easy to find there. And next, I guess for those of you that are new to client success, a bunch of you are new, first time on the session. To learn a little bit more about us, we are a customer success growth platform. And so what we do is we help all things related to customer success. So think about everything that your CSMs do, whether that's onboarding, driving adoption, driving renewals, driving growth, anything that they need to provide a better customer experience, give better insights into your leadership team, collaborate internally on behalf of customers, all those things that of course result in better retention, better growth. We were just talking to Mark before we got on the session. He said the first thing he asks before he asks top line revenue or anything else when he's looking to make an investment is, tell me your retention numbers. And so that's a big thing that we help with. We're a leader on G2 in customer success. You see here on the slide. Last month we were pumped. We won the 2020 Cohort Award for the best customer success solution on the market. So if you'd like to have a look at it, we'd love to show you what we've been up to. Hit us up. We're at clientsuccess.com. On Twitter at Client Success. You can shoot me a note directly. I'm Mark with a K at Client Success. And just one more thing before we jump into things, I'll post another link in the chat pane here in a second, but we have started we're doing a state of customer success survey. And so we've got, several hundred customer success professionals that have already taken it. And we'd love to hear from anybody that's in customer success, everyone that fills out the survey. It'll take about 10 minutes to finish. We're giving a bunch of really cool Apple prizes you'll see on the landing page when I post it, but love to hear from everybody. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mark. You good to get going, Mark?
I'm good to go, man. Congrats on all the awards. I've been hearing great things in the market, so I'm not surprised. But
Thanks, man.
that's awesome, especially this early on. So,
Yeah, we're
do you
pumped.
see
We're
my
pumped.
screen?
See your screen, and just so everybody knows, Mark's gonna share a ton of really good content. I'm gonna man the chat pane, so if you got questions or comments, anything that you want in, feel free to pop them in there. I think you said you'll stop a time or two, and we'll go through some questions. But that being
Yeah, I don't
said,
like to. Yeah, I don't like to roll like straight through. I'm going to present a couple topics to you
Sure.
all. Have the questions come in anytime. They don't even really have to be related to what I'm talking about. We chose a particular topic for today, but I'm happy to talk about anything customer success. I did run the customer success org in addition to the sales org at HubSpot for like 3 years. So I had quite a few insights from that, and of course, in the companies I advise, like I typically start with customer success. Hopefully in the next 10 minutes, you'll realize why. So excited for everyone to be here. It's always interesting that as a sales thought leader, I suppose, I probably talk about customer success more often
Right.
because to me, it is sort of that underlying bridge that accelerates growth. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So one question I've been thinking a lot about is when to scale and how fast, and how to bring more rigor and science to that question. And perhaps a better way to ask it in the last couple of months is like, when should we start scaling again? Like this is a question that I'm hearing quite a bit from founders, presidents, CEOs of companies of all sizes. Is like, there's still a lot of uncertainty out there. We made some pretty tough calls 3 months ago. It could have involved some layoffs. It could involve some furloughs. It could involve some salary reductions. We're kind of scratching our head here, wondering when is it time to scale again. And so when I ask that question, I get a pretty consistent answer, which is like, especially in a startup community, is when you have product market fit. That's when you should start scaling. Now, that's great. I mean, the work of Eric Ries and Lean Startup, really brought this product market fit to the forefront last decade. And it really revolutionized how we run companies, how we bring new products to market. I think the problem is, if you ask 10 people when you have product market fit, you get 10 different answers. And I don't know if people want to throw in some chats right now. What do you think product market fit is? I can, go ahead, Mark. I don't know if stuff's flowing. What would you say, Mark? What's product market
Yeah,
fit?
I mean, it's like you said, you talk to 10 companies in SaaS, it's, if you're a freemium market, you might even say, okay, I've got a certain amount of users. Or, if you're an enterprise software company, it's, we've got a certain amount of logos. Or, Jason says here, consistent value creation, delivering on the promise in the sales process.
I like that one a lot. I like that one a lot.
That one's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's probably the more sophisticated option. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people are just like, hey, man, I got a few people that are swiping credit cards. James says when you have 5 million in revenue,
Yeah. Right.
critical
so these are
core
pretty,
target audience.
these are pretty common answers. I do like Jason's a lot. User core that pull the product versus being pushed to adopt. Interesting. Yeah, when you have the pull versus push. So yeah, it's kind of strange that we rest this critical decision of when to scale on this thing called product market fit, and look at the chat board. I mean, it's like there's like a 10-page, there's like a 2-page Wikipedia page that shows all the different ways that people talk about product market fit.
Yeah, right.
So I'll give you my take on it, because I've been thinking a lot about it, and this is many years of work in watching like whether companies scale or not, whether they succeed in bringing new products to market or not. And I'll tell you, I do, the most common answer I do get is probably more in line with James's on the 5 million in revenue. Like, even my students, I push my students, like, what is product market fit? And most of them say it's like when a certain amount of sales happen. I think that's very dangerous personally, because it really doesn't, like, great for this webinar, like, it really doesn't say anything about the customer success. And shouldn't product market, like, it should be that the product lived up to the value, which is what I think Vanessa had said there. And sales has nothing to do with that. Revenue has nothing to do with that's market message fit. We all know, like, selling ice to Eskimos, right? Like, you know, that just means you have a great pitch and a great messaging to a great market. It doesn't mean that your product's going to execute on it. You know, I've seen like more qualitative answers, like some really great people just say like, you know, when you have a workable product in a big market, cool, but still kind of subjective. What was the one we liked here? It was Jason, consistent value creation, deliver on the promise during the sales process. Like it a lot. I'm just I want to attach it to a metric. Now Sean Ellis says when you survey your customers and 40% say they couldn't live without your product. Now we're getting somewhere. Metrics driven, 40%, interesting, but I'm sure some customer success exec on the phone could, or on the horn here, could say, like, surveys are riddled with false positive, right? Like people, when you fill out a survey, you feel bad for the entrepreneur. You're like, oh, I love your product, you know, like it doesn't. I'm a little worried about that, right? So for me, the metric that I think correlates most with product market fit is retention. Okay, so that's kind of where we got close to on James's comment here. Now the problem is whether we're a big company bringing a new product to market, whether a big, you know, mid-sized company deciding when to scale again, whether we're a new company trying to figure out when to scale, we can't wait for customer attention to surface. It's a lagging indicator. I mean, the work that we do today, the customers we bring in this quarter, we're not going to know their retention for probably a year. And so we just don't have that time, right? So what we have to do is we have to seek out the leading indicator to customer attention.
So it's not that you're saying like don't pay attention to whether it's daily active users, monthly active users, revenue. Like that's not the whole story. Is that the way to think about it? Like revenue is a good thing.
DAUs and MAUs could be a leading indicator. Okay. Now, and I'm going to show you some examples. I'm going to show you, Mark, how like I think about. The first point is like we all should define the leading indicator of customer attention for our business.
Sure.
And I rarely meet a founder or a CEO that has done that. And I think this is just critical because I think this is the most scientific metric-driven approach on true product market fit, okay? I've never seen a leading indicator of customer attention be revenue. Okay, like, you know, revenue has its place. I mean, it could, again, I just think like what revenue, like early sales and revenue just tell us like, is our messaging right? Are our salespeople good, right? So, but I'm looking for a lead indicator. It's not gonna, like, if I have 1 million in revenue versus 5 million in revenue, that doesn't tell me anything on whether my churn is gonna be good, my retention is gonna be good.
Yep.
So I want a leading indicator of customer retention. Now DAUs and MAUs for sure. Okay, so we have to seek out this leading indicator. And so this is for the programming oriented customer success leaders and founders, you'll kind of like this approach, but this is just how I kind of think about it is the leading indicator for customer retention is true if P% of customers achieve E events in T days or T time. Now that sounds a little like variable driven programmatic, but like let's bring this to life with some real stories that are pretty damn close. Like if you do the reading out there and talk to some of the executives here. So let's look at Slack. 70%, we have this, you know, we have product market fit if 70% of customers send 2,000 team messages in the first 30 days. I like that. I like that a lot more than like, you know, I mean, it basically is, you know, putting a metric behind what James said, which is creating consistent customer value, right? And so Dropbox, 85% of customers upload one file and one folder on one device within an hour, much faster, like very transactional, freemium, much faster. Remember HubSpot's, Mark, we had to go after this one when we were roughly like probably 10, 20 million in revenue. So we were a little behind the ball on this. And we did study like 50 permutations on what it could be. And it was, you know, 80% of customers using 5 or more features in the 25 feature platform within 60 days. So those are some examples, and hopefully that's a format that you can play with to figure out what your lead indicator of customer retention is, regardless of your size. I mean, gosh, if you're $100 million business, who cares? Like, do it. I mean, like we need to know as we scale if this thing is still working. We're going to grow into new markets. We're going to grow through new products. We need to understand this stuff. And guess what? Everyone's relearning their business right now. Like there isn't a single buyer out there that has the same priorities today that they had in January. No
Sure.
way. So we have to like relearn this stuff. And so, you know, now what are the guiding principles here? Like for the P percentage, you know, I don't know. I see like 70, 80%. You can see some patterns here. I'll show you later why I don't think it matters that much to get the P percentage perfect. Just have some metric out there. The T time, like that obviously is strongly correlated to like the complexity of your product and onboarding, right? Dropbox, in a minute, you've backed up your file, right? So like that should be like an hour. HubSpot, pretty complicated. Like there's some implementation. Workday could be 6 months. You know, implementing Workday like a Fortune 500 company, like that could be a 6-month lead indicator, which sucks because we learn slow, but it is what it is, right? The E event is pretty critical. All right, so 2,000 team messages, one file, one folder, you know, 5 out of the 25 features. That's the most important decision that we need to make as a management team. And a couple things there is one, instrumentable and not qualitative, right? Not like CSM says they're in good shape. You know, like that's
Sure.
no, we gotta, you know, instrumental. It's usually like some sort of like usage pattern, setup pattern, perhaps even like an ROI, like in the HubSpot case, like lead growth, right? So like that's something that we try to keep it simple, because this, you will show later how this is directional for like what CSMs and salespeople are going to have in their minds. And then the other cool one, if you can do it, is aligned with your unique value prop. Because when everyone's aligned on it, if that's aligned with your unique value prop, you're gonna create a lot of sticky business. And so like HubSpot's a great example. Like, you know, as we figured out statistically, I was like, yeah, no kidding, it was 5 out of 25 features. Because what are we? We're the all-in-one solution against the point solutions. Like if someone wants blog, get WordPress. If someone wants a social media, get Hootsuite. If someone wants email, do MailChimp. But if you want all those things to talk to each other, we're not going to be the best email platform or the social media platform or the blog, but we're the best at get it all to talk to each other. So it totally made sense. And that was like revolutionary for our business, for everyone to be honed in on where we're going to win and create sticky business. Okay. So now what we need to do in order to even more accelerate our learning on product market fit is organize our customer acquisition by cohort and measure how we're doing against this leading indicator. Okay, so if we go back to our Slack example, this isn't Slack's data, but just as an example, we're looking for 2,000 team messages sent. This company acquired 24 customers in January, not doing too good, right? 2 months in, only 27% hit the leading indicator. That's terrible. You have this like, the whole thing is they send messages and only 27%, 7 months in only 44%. This company does not have product market fit. Now they made a bunch of changes to their onboarding, the way they sell, the leads they generated, the product and onboarding, et cetera. And look what happened in September, 2 months in 68% versus 27%. So this allows us to do sort of an apples to apples comparison. Like within 60 days, how are we doing relative to past cohorts that were 60 days old? This company got product market fit right around here, in my opinion. Okay. So,
Is
and
there
then
a
the final
specific benchmark, or is there a specific, you know,
Yeah,
benchmark on that cohort, or is it just, you know, month over month we're doing better? Obviously, these
better.
guys are
I
doing
think
better
so.
going, you know, left to right.
I don't know yet. You know, I don't know yet, Mark. I think like we're gonna have to study it as we get more and more of these at bats. My gut, like I said, tells me it's around 70 to 80%. But again, I don't like, because you're viewing this, I'm like, okay, in like September, I'm looking at August cohort, or like October, I'm looking at August, and I'm like, ooh, that looks really good.
Yep.
I'm like calling victory kind of. And I'll watch it, right? Like let's move on to the next stage. But I'm calling victory. And then if the 56 goes down to 40, then oh geez, like let's go back to it. But it went up to 72. So it's like, hey, and everything else is looking good. So, you know, I think we're looking good here. So that's why the exact P percent I don't think is critical. And then this is one example of how to, over time, and for the companies that are more in the mid-market, which I know most of you are, hopefully you've got some form of a data set to go back and actually study whether or not it truly correlates, right? So like with retention. So in this example, this company acquired 68 customers between 12 and 18 months ago. Okay, so like in whatever, Q1, Q2 of 2019, they acquired 68 customers. Now, 55 of those, oh, and the retention rate now, like a year later, is 82%, okay? 55 of those customers had hit the leading indicator within the specified time. Okay, so if it was Slack, like 55 of them had sent 2,000 team messages in 30 days, okay? The retention rate of those customers is 93% as of today, okay? 13 of them did not. 13 of them did not hit 2,000 team messages in 30 days. Either they never hit it or it took them longer. And the retention rate of that cohort is 39%. Bam, we learned something beautiful about our business. But that correlates. And we'll keep watching it in case the market shifts. But I feel really good about that. Now, the bottom example doesn't, right? Same data set, 68 customers, but the problem is the ones that hit the lead indicator, retention rate is 84%. The ones that didn't, retention rate is 77%. It's too tight. There's no difference. Right? So I'm not worried, like, if we were focusing on the last year on getting all of our customers to send as many team messages, that didn't hurt our business. It didn't hurt our business. It happens to not necessarily correlate, so we have to go back and look for something different. But you know, hopefully we feel like we've made some progress, right? So, so that's the way I think about it in like a dorky like computer programming way. Is computer product market fit is not like when people buy a product. It's not like when you have 5 million in sales. It's not like when you have a big workable product in. It's when the leading indicator is true, and it actually correlates with customer retention. So anyway, why don't we stop there, Mark? I don't know if you saw some questions flowing in or whatever. We can talk about that.
Yeah, a bunch of questions. And so like one of the things that I'm kind of thinking through is like, okay, let's say I'm not, you know, I'm new to this and I totally get what you're talking about, but like, I'm not sure where to even start with trying to figure out what my leading indicator should be. So like Slack, you got theirs,
Yeah.
Dropbox, you got theirs, HubSpot, you had what we had.
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe is that just change?
It's
is there
creative,
context
man.
beyond
It's
that?
creative. Like, you know, as much as I love to seek out the formula and the math and the facts, there is still creativity and innovation in entrepreneurship, and this is where we have to use our creative, knowledge. Like, I mean, I don't know, like for you guys, it would like you're trying to set up just to riff on it, like you're trying to get people to like instrument their client, post-sale client retention process.
Yep.
Certainly like, having the product set up and probably like, maybe the first like dashboard being watched or created, something like that. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
again, if we get this wrong, like it's not going to hurt our business, to have focused everyone on that. It's just,
Sure.
it's just how strong is the correlation going to be?
And I think to kind of riff on that a little bit, because you're right. Like, so for context for everybody else, like we at Client Success, we've been following this for, probably about 6 or 8 months now. And yeah, we've got our kind of leading indicator kind of aligns more with kind of that HubSpot use case of like a certain amount of people using certain apps.
Nice.
And that's been working
Nice.
really interesting for us. We've got a really nice cohort that shows if they implement these 5 or 6 pieces of the platform, then, we've got a much more interesting cohort than they don't. And so I bet that's, if I'm running especially some type of enterprise software company that's kind of like a more kind of a, help you do your work software.
Yeah.
I would suspect that, that's where a lot of people should start.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's some sort of setup and usage. And actually it brings up a point that probably a lot of people are asking, and I apologize. It'll be done by the end of this month. There is a 40-page ebook, by the way, that really walks through all this stuff. And I'll have a link at the end for you all. But I haven't had a chance to, like, one common question I get is, well, the chart that you just showed, that's great for like a transactional business, but like, what if we're selling like $1 million, deals to companies and we close like 2 customers a quarter? What is this? Does this work here? Yes, it does. We have like 3 companies in the stage 2 portfolio that fit that and run the sequence. It just doesn't look like this. Like it looks like this when you're like hundreds of millions in revenue and like hundreds of big customers. But when you're smaller, it's basically a health card with like maybe 5 or 6 dimensions per customer, right? So here's a big customer we signed up. We signed up Bank of America. And so our 5-prong health score is something like some sort of form of activation, or they technically set up some form of usage around like what features are being used, some sort of breadth of penetration, like how many users. Like it depends on the product, right? But you understand there's multiple dimensions, and at the board level, we literally look at the customer list and like red, yellow, green from the health score, and then we could drill in depending on where we're at, right? So it's a little different, but a different view. But that's how I typically set this up for bigger accounts. What other questions are out there, Mark?
One of the questions that Ed asks is, why not use customer outcomes versus feature usage? Like, so those 3 examples from like, what is that just because those guys couldn't like figure out the outcomes? Like, if you can figure out the outcomes, do you use those?
I mean, I think for Slack, it could have been harder. Absolutely. That's a form. That's a good definition for E. Like for HubSpot, it could have been lead lift. And we looked at that. That was our initial theory, was if leads are lifting by 5% a month or 5% a quarter, then they're good. That was our first theory. And for whatever reason, the feature usage correlated more strongly. But I think outcomes is fantastic if that's built into your system, and like growth in traffic, growth in leads, reduction in cost, whatever it is, that's fantastic. As long as it can be easily instrumented from the system and not necessarily driven by like dependency on human, interaction.
Cool. There's a few other questions. I know we've got a bunch more.
Let's do one more. Let's do one more. Yeah.
So, Jason asked this question, what if my value is sporadic throughout the year? It's not like a monthly, like a HubSpot or a Dropbox or a Slack where I'm using it every day. Maybe I'm a tax software company, and so I get used heavy in Q1, or maybe I'm some type of hopefully the travel businesses come back, but like some type of travel that kind of impacts on them. Would you kind of?
That's a really good question, man. Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't had that one yet. We have to work on it. Maybe you can send me some ideas in the chat, everyone. But I would say like maybe you have to adjust it by the season. Like if you are a tax person, like, and you happen to sign someone up new in August, for example, like maybe there's some like lower level like thing you're trying to achieve in that first month or two, knowing that it isn't tax season. Maybe it's just basic reporting hooked up with a booking, etc. Versus when you're in the midst of the season, like you're gonna have to obviously be a lot more aggressive around it. I don't know. I'll have to riff on that one a little bit and think about it in some practical examples.
You can even think about it as multiple cohorts. You have like a cohort of, these are the people we acquired in season. These are the people we acquired out of season, and treat them different. I don't know.
I like that. You might be right, Mark. You might be right, Mark. Is like we have to separate it out by the in versus out. I like that. Okay. So then I'm always after this question. So hopefully you all appreciate that. Like, hey, listen, when to scale and how fast is in your territory as customer success managers. I mean, it's like, let's make that happen. Now, are we ready to scale once we see that? No. I have this thing called go-to-market fit. And what is that? Well, if what we did, and I think James had it pretty nicely here, if I describe the math that I just went through, it's basically all we did was we figured out that we can create customer value consistently. That's what we measured. The question is whether we can do it scalably and profitably. And in the first stage of bringing a product to market, I would recommend don't worry about scale and profits. Like just see if you can make this customer success happen consistently. But before we scale, we're going to make sure we can do it consistently and profitably. And we usually, at least in SaaS, where I think a lot of you are, we talk about unit economics as a way to do that. Same problem here though. Unit economics is a lagging indicator. Like we acquire a bunch of customers today, Q2, we really don't know the unit economics on those efforts for 6 months or more. And so we've got to extract those items back. Now that's a little easier to do. And if you love algebra, you're going to love this slide. And if you hate algebra, then close your eyes or grab a cup of coffee.
Get over
it. So it's kind of, just not that we have to understand this math, but just so we understand what all we're doing is taking this outcome that we're solving for. Like, let's say that our measure of unit economics is LTV to CAC greater than 3, which is a common way to do it. So we just have to extract those outcomes back to daily activities, right? So, or weekly outcomes, right? So lifetime value is how much is a customer paying us times the gross margin divided by churn. That's a common way that people look at it. And so, and CAC, the other part, is the marketing CAC plus the sales CAC. Okay, the marketing CAC is how much does it cost per lead divided by the lead close rate. So if I pay $100 per lead and I close them all, my marketing cost per customer is $100. If I pay $100 a lead and I close 10% of them, my marketing cost per customer is $1,000, right? So, and the salesperson cost is, the sales CAC is just how much do I pay my salesperson every month divided by how many customers do they bring in. And how many customers they bring in is how many leads do I give them times the close rate. Okay, so I've basically just extracted this, LTV to CAC greater than 3 to like numbers that I can better like understand. How much on average do my customers pay me? How many leads am I creating? What's my cost per lead? What's my conversion rate? So this is just an example of how you can pump those numbers in to generate a target business model that works. And all we have to do is translate this into dashboards that we do all the time, right? Just making sure that we have these covered. And as long as we keep the blue line above the red, then we are running at an efficiency that will yield good unit economics, and that would yield go-to-market fit. Okay, so now that we have these two things, let me see if we have to ask ourselves how fast to scale. So we have this leading indicator attention and leading indicator unit economics. This is now our speedometer. And this is where like so many businesses, in my opinion, do very, very bad things right now. Which is like, whether you're a younger business or you're in a growth stage, or maybe you're bringing a new product to market, like you have this like perceived product market fit, you raise money, you've got 2 salespeople working on this product, and then you hire 10 salespeople the next month. I mean, Mark, you know what it takes to like hire 10 salespeople in a month. I mean, how many friggin' offers is that? How many in-person interviews is that? How many phone screens is that? How many I mean, it's like, we just can't do it.
And then the onboarding of them, and training them, and coaching them, and all of that.
Managing, feeding them with leads. We're not ready. I don't know why we do that. Like most people do that, whether again it's a startup growing, or if you're bringing a new product to market within an organization. That's even worse. Like, oh, we've got this idea for this new product in 2020. We're going to start building it. And we're also going to train our 500-person sales team on it. What? We don't even know what we got. Like, I don't understand why we're like, when we're sitting in a room, like you and I have an idea, Mark, for a startup, like thanks to the work of Eric Ries and Steve Blank, we build MVPs and prototype and agile. We don't hire 17 reps while we're building it to train them on this thing we don't even know. But yet when we're a $50, $100 million business and we launch a new product, we do that, right? So hopefully we have a little more like science about when we're ready for that. And the scale is not like adding a bunch of reps at once, it's a pace. Let's add 1 rep a month for 5 months and watch the speedometer. Okay, let's
maybe on another session is like thinking, because the other thing I see people screw up is, yes, they either hire the 17 reps or they hire the no reps until product's ready, or they wait to start marketing until they're ready for, product and reps. And so we talk about this all the time, where it's like, you know what, you should be, doing a bunch of work to create a bunch of content in demand, so that when the product is ready,
Sure.
you actually have people, you actually have leads that you can sell into.
Totally.
And so you could hopefully speed up that amount of reps. Or
yeah,
speed
that's
that
a
up a
fantastic move. That's a fantastic move.
I see early stage founders screw that up all the time, where they're like, dude, I'm not going to talk to anybody until the product is 100% ready.
Let's be in stealth mode.
Stealth mode, right?
Don't tell anyone.
I mean, there's like
0.1% of people in the world can out execute you and are in a position where they're sitting at home bored, waiting for a good idea to fall in your lap. I mean, my recommendation would be don't be afraid of getting out of stealth and start talking to people. So absolutely, Mark, I think that's great, is like generating some demand if you have the extra bandwidth to do that. I'll kind of get to that a little bit in terms of the order here, but this is the point on scale and growth. And so, as we're looking at this, when you're getting to be a bigger business, this is a $30 million business, more in line probably with some of the folks here, you know, the averages of these numbers get to be dangerous. Like, oh yeah, we're good. Our LTV to CAC for the company is greater than 3, and the churn's great. It's you know, retention is 91% for the company. Let's scale. But we actually have a couple different companies underneath our company, right? Like if we segment it, we have, this company has 2 products, selling to 2 markets, mid-market enterprise, selling through 2 channels, a direct sales team and a partner team. So any choice of growth is a combination, it's a product market channel combination. That's what we're seeing here. And they all perform differently. Like in this case, if you look at the numbers, this company has figured out their mid-market and enterprise business with their current products sold through direct. They haven't figured anything else out. Their channel program is not performing. Like the LTV to CAC is too low, the churn is too high in the mid-market, and their new product has nothing on it. So if they're going to add 10 reps in the next 6 months, you can't add it to this new stuff yet. It's not figured out, right? So this tells us a lot about like telling the organization, where are we ready for scale versus where are we experimenting versus where are we ignoring? And as we add people, hopefully we feed the core businesses that we know, product market channel combinations, and we keep the other groups small, insular, so that they can learn very quickly. And so, you know, this, we kind of went through this at about 150 people at HubSpot. We were organized by function, you know, marketing over there, sales over here, and service over here. And that was a point where the functions ended up on different floors for the first time. And that was the first time where we had total misalignment between these groups. Like everyone started solving for themselves. Like if you ask marketing what a good customer was, it was someone that was easy to download, get to download an ebook. If you ask sales what a good customer was, it was someone that was easy to get their credit card from. And if you ask customer success who was a good customer was, it was someone that was easy to get on the product and using it and seeing success. Now, customer success was 10 times more right than anyone else. But we had to align those, and we had a huge like breakthrough when we reorganized the company by the buyer and specialized the marketing, sales, and customer success people into like cross-functional pods that worked on the same type of buyer together, had that accountability to one another, sat together. And I strongly encourage that as we scale, is to not like, you know, it's a little more difficult to get everything working together. And, you know, sometimes you have one pod that crushes it and one pod that's slow. So you can, if one pod crushes it from a sales standpoint, you can float some customers over to the pod that's struggling a little bit just to keep the utilization. But for the most part, these 3 BDRs feed these 6 reps who feed these 2 customer success people, and they sit together. And then when that customer goes, like ghosts you and never sets up, you can just tap the sales rep on the shoulder and be like, hey, listen, this customer hasn't been around for 3 weeks. What's going on? Can you help me? And they're in it together. And then of course we can measure it like we showed by those different groups. And that's actually what we did there at HubSpot. So I'm going to get into like how, now that we know these phases, how do we think about our execution? But let me stop there, Mark, if there's questions people have.
Let's see. Yeah. So do you have any questions over the last like 5-10 minutes, pop them in. Most of the questions we have are kind of,
if there's anything interesting, yeah, fine. You can throw it out there. If there's anything interesting.
So, you know, Mark asked this question of, you know, in your example, kind of back to your cohort analysis, you need to back test the assumption for an early stage company with a few customers. You know, basically what questions are they validating? Actually, Mark, if you can give me a little bit more context on that question. I don't quite follow your question there.
I see. Is for early stage company with a few customers, do you suggest making assumptions and validating? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about, is you're not, you can't come out of the gate for a young company with a data-driven approach to figuring out what these numbers are, these lead indicators are. You just have to make some stabs and measure them. And you're probably going to be wrong, but at least you've instrumented and you can iterate. So, and then I think Asaf says, what happens when the purchase frequency is low? Are you not taking a risk that you get the lead indicator wrong? Yeah, so I think he's basically talking like, if you're selling multi-year
back to like your big enterprise example, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
So
yeah, good.
back to the go-to-market fit stuff. I mean, like we got a bunch of questions on the product market fit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like look at the go-to-market fit side and they're like, man, this is really cool. But I'm in customer success, so I don't know all these unit economics. I don't, trying to figure out how do we establish pods and do this. Like,
Mhm.
what would be your advice to somebody who's managing a customer success team or kind of coming into customer success, or what are maybe the first like one or two pieces of that go-to-market equation
Yeah.
that you would use to kind of try to push your company in this direction?
Yeah, I mean, the job of customer success in that part is, remember, if we're targeting LTV to CAC, what are some of the inputs to that? Churn is critical, so we talked about that one, and you're driving that. So is gross margin, which you're driving as well. Your cost is set to. So I don't think gross margin matters at all at product market fit, but we have to know that we can get it at least close. Like if we're designing post-sale teams, you know, how many customer success managers are there per customer? How long is our onboarding? How many touch points are there? How many account managers do we have? Who owns expansion? Who owns retention? Is that segmented, right? So like these are all critical decisions that are ultimately going to drive our unit economics. So is there another one out there? Or do you want me to talk about the alignment here?
Let's go to the alignment,
Okay, cool.
and then we'll come back to some of these others.
Okay. Yeah, so now that we have like a view on where we are in the scaling journey, that is, it's very driven by the metrics and it's very rooted in customer retention. We can figure out like critical decisions on our go-to-market design. In this stage here, where all we're trying to do is create, consistent customer retention. This is where the whole the old adage of do unscalable things. Paul Graham, Y Combinator, do unscalable things. Like David Cancel, who is the founder of Drift and he was our head of product at HubSpot. When he was in the early stages of Drift, as the founder CEO, he was getting on a plane to onboard customers paying him $50 a month. It's crazy, right? Like, do everything you can to get these customers to hit that early indicator, right? So it's a win at all cost playbook. It's not codified because we don't know what we have. This sales rep is kind of like a combination of a product manager and account executive. There may even be some CSM flavors into them too. And I don't want to talk about scalable demand gen, price, compensation, et cetera at this point. It's just do unscalable things. But once we do get that product market fit and need to move into go-to-market fit, that's when we have to codify things. We have to codify our sales playbook. We have to codify our onboarding playbook to make sure that if we're going to accelerate the pace by which we bring on customers, we have to codify that. We have to have like a demand gen channel, and we have to have a pricing model and comp plan. Now, let me talk about the comp plan for a second. And this is a real HubSpot example. If you haven't heard it before, it's a funny one. So the first comp plan, because like sales comp plan and customer success, huge correlation in a lot of businesses, but very rarely understood. And so we had really bad churn in the first year of HubSpot. You hit 8% a month at one point. And we did an analysis and said, okay, we had like 7 customer success managers. We're like, maybe like 2 or 3 of the customer success managers have really low churn and we should just copy how they're onboarding customers. But look at this. They're all the same, between 3.5%, 4%. Then we looked at it by salesperson. That was the difference. Worst salesperson almost had 10% monthly churn. Whew, that's bad. Best one had 1%. So I was like, holy cow.
And on traditional metric, the confusing thing about this was living through that on the conventional metrics, that rep who had the highest churn was also one of the top
sales,
quote unquote producers, right? They brought in the most number of new logos. They brought in the most number of new credit cards.
Any old school board or management team evaluating the sales team would have thought that rep was the best rep.
Yep.
Because we judge our reps on first revenue, not LTV. Totally wrong. Okay, so and we also concluded that, gosh, I would have never thought that this churn problem is not a customer success onboarding problem. It's not a product problem. It's a sales problem, right? So, and the best way to, the first place I turn to fix a sales behavior problem is the compensation plan, right? That's the fastest, best way to do it. So at the time, like before we had that analysis, we had what I'd call a really great hunting plan. We basically, it was simple. We only had one product. It was $250 a month. If you signed up a customer, I paid you $500, end of story. And if the customer churned in the first 4 months, we took the money back. And if they stayed for 4 months, it's yours to keep. Great hunting plan. We went from like 100 to 1,000 customers, from 1 million to 3 million in like 7 months, record, right? So, but here's how what the churn looked like. The churn in the first month was next to zero, the second month next to zero, third month next to zero, fourth month next to zero, month 5, bam. Coincidence, Mark?
Well, we just learned how to get people to pay 4 months up front. And we didn't care what happened to them after that.
Call them every day. How you doing? Still loving the software? And then you ghost them after 4 months. Reps work their comp plan. Crazy. Okay, so basically I analyzed, this is the analysis of each rep. So this particular rep here was the top performer. They sold 10.8 units, customers a month, 10.8 customers a month. They all paid the same. And the average churn per month was 1.6%. That's a good business. The LTV there, they were generating about 170,000 of lifetime value if you do the math out. Now you look at this customer, this one over here, this rep here is selling more, selling 12 customers a month compared to the 10.8, but the churn on those is 6.2% a month, ridiculous. So if you do the LTV math on that, it's only like 45,000. So totally busted. And I wouldn't recommend this comp plan, but this is what I did is I basically divided them in top quartile, second, third, and bottom quartile and adjusted their comp accordingly, right? So we used to pay you $500 per customer. If you're in the top tier of LTV and basically churn, then we're going to pay you double, 1,000 per customer, because you sign up good customers. Second one, we'll give you a 50% bump. Third tier, no change. Fourth tier, you're cut in half. If you want to leave, there's the door. But I'm going to teach you how to sell good customers. And within 6 months, churn it was down below 2% a month from 8. Crazy, right? Now, it didn't sustain, like it got to the point where the actual churn that was happening was outside of the reps control, but we had to change it. But my recommendation here is basically the one I like today, and this gets back to our customer success leading indicator, is I like to, especially if the leading indicator is measurable in the first 60 days, pay half the commission when the rep gets the signature and half of it when the leading indicator occurs. Okay, so remember with Slack, that example, they get half the commission when they sign the customer and half when the customer hits 2,000 team messages. HubSpot, half when they sign the customer, half when they set up 5 or more features. And we're not trying to get our salespeople to be customer success people. They shouldn't be involved. Just first off, pay attention to what's happening so that you can learn like what, for people that set up fast, was there something that you did in the sales process? And for people that didn't set up, was there something you did? And you'll also be surprised that sometimes like in Dropbox's example, not that they're necessarily driving people through sales, but sometimes if you enable customers to set this stuff up and use it in a free trial, salespeople will actually get the leading indicator accomplished before the sale, which is like super powerful if it's possible. Sometimes it's not, and it's technically challenging, but that ends up being a really powerful thing. The other thing that happens here, was there any questions on that, Mark, on the compensation?
I don't think on the comp plan. I think I had another question I wanted to jump back to, but I'm going to wait till you kind of get through this piece.
Yeah, and this is just like how we think about building out the playbook. I think there's plenty of stuff out there that you folks have done, et cetera, that's high quality stuff on like playbook design, customer success. But just like understand and appreciating the how data can drive this. I've done a lot of work on how data can drive sales playbooks, but we also looked at how data can drive customer success playbooks when you're starting to have some pretty good volume going through. And so like this example is like a question of like, well, when should we go after a customer for a renewal, or when should we go after a customer for an upsell? That might be a better, like when do we look at them for an upsell? Well, we can establish different like trigger theories on when someone would actually be qualified for an upsell, right? So here's like some actual ones that were done, which is, well, maybe when we see someone have 3 or more lead nurturing campaigns set up in our software, maybe at that point, because our software price point says if once they set up 5, they need to upgrade, maybe that's a good point to reach out. And in that case, over the course of a quarter, this company identified 154 times in that quarter where one of the customers hit 3 or more lead nurturing campaigns. So they reached out to them, they created an opportunity for renewal in the software. Turned out they got 111 of them on the phone, created 36 ops, and 17 actually turned into an upgrade. So the identification upgrade was 11%. That's pretty good. We can do the math on the amount of the upgrade, and we can literally we can almost like attribute out an LTV to CAC on just that effort right there to see if it was worth it. Now this one was on fire. Like the other theory was if their leads go up by 300% in 3 months, then they're probably an upgrade candidate. Well, they identified 40 of those, and look, half of them actually generated an upgrade. That's wonderful. I mean, there's no doubt that that effort was like highly profitable. In fact, that says to me that this line is too aggressive. I should look for people with lead lift of 150%. It probably still would be a profitable journey. And this one here was terrible. This, like when they download the product literature on smart content, some new feature that we built to generate upgrade, maybe that's an upgrade opportunity. Well, we identified almost 300 of those and only one customer upgraded. That was a waste of time. We lost money on that. Don't ever scale that behavior. So we gotta move that along. Maybe they request a demo on smart content, might be something different. So we have opportunities as we scale to bring some science into our triggering events and also run funnel shapes just like we do in sales of how many of these upgrade opportunities are identified or renewal opportunities are identified or churn risks are identified. How many connects, how many ops, how many upgrades by rep so we can see who's actually performing in there. Okay. So that's where we end up, and this is the framework on when to scale and how fast. It's like rooted in customer retention, as we pointed out, I figured people would appreciate that that viewpoint because I just don't think we think that way. I think we measure the success of business by revenue, and that's wrong. And I think we measure whether or not we're going too fast or too slow by the quarterly P&L. And the quarterly P&L is what we did 6 months ago, not what we're doing today. So hopefully this inspired some thought for you as customer success leaders to take a leadership position in some of these more macro strategic decisions in your company.
Super interesting stuff. If we could, let's take the line for us. So you've got the sales hire, and I'm going to call it the CSM hire.
Yeah.
And like, how does the CSM hire differ as you go through the different stages? What are the characteristics?
Yeah, it's kind of similar.
I was like, who do I bring on? What do they look like? What do they?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. And I should have changed it. It's almost like go-to-market hire, because the CSM, like I'm seeing more and more companies hire a CSM before a salesperson, and I like that. As long as the founder can do some selling, then so I think that first CSM has to have that sort of combined product management capability, because we don't have a playbook. We don't really know what we're selling. I mean, this is the first time where, during the product development cycle, maybe we talk to 10 potential customers. This is the first time that we could talk to dozens in the course of a month or quarter. And that CSM needs to be able to pattern recognize and not just say it's not working, but help understand the pattern and communicate that to the engineer. And once we move out of product market fit, I think this is still the case, Mark. Like the CSM has to be the process builder versus the process executor, right? Like that second, third, fourth CSM, they need to be psyched to be building the onboarding process.
Sure.
The 10th CSM is just go through training and execute the process. Like you're running at scale. Like our utilization is like, you should onboard 15 customers a month. Here's the process you took them through. It's very codified. So I think these labels are still relevant to that title.
Sure. How would you, so you went through those examples of like how we adjusted the comp plan for reps. How do you think about the comp plan for CSMs in that same context? It's like, do you, or do you worry less about that because, that data showed in that example, it really, the CSMs in that example were not the drivers there.
Yeah, in my opinion, like the jury's still a little out, in my opinion, on like the effectiveness of variable compensation plans with CSMs. I'm not sure that I've seen enough of it either way to have a strong opinion. I will say that like it's definitely, if I were to do it, I would do it. If I were CEO of a company, I would do it. I would make it less leverage. So my sales reps would probably be 50% base, 50% commission. My CSMs would be 80% base, 20% commission. And I think the mistake is I don't like it based on churn. It's just like such a lagging indicator. It's like, how does a 24-year-old CSM, it's like, yeah, your goal is 90% retention. Like as a 24-year-old CSM, that doesn't tell me a lot on what to do, versus like, yeah, your goal is to get, all of your customers to use 5 or more features in 60 days. That's a lot more actionable, and now I can train like, well, what are the likely 5 features to start with, and what are the best combinations, and how do you inspire someone to use a social media tool when they didn't really want to? Like now all of a sudden, like it, and so I'd comp on that, and again, less leverage, but comped on the. That's why this creation of lead indicator customer retention, I feel, is so important in terms of like a mystical thing for us to understand in our business.
Got it. Totally makes sense.
Maybe do one more question.
Yeah. So let's see here. So Jason asked this question, how do you measure how many customers a CSM can manage? How do you kind of manage that workflow? Is it, how do you know what's your, like a lot of people will think about it as like, I'm going to have a CSM manage a certain revenue book of business. And it depends on who you talk to. It's like 1.5 to 2.5 million.
Sure.
Do you have any thoughts on like, how do you decide kind of CSM workload?
Yeah, sure. So I'll probably say it more in the sense of like, I find more account managers are maybe managing the long-term book of business. The CSMs may be managing like the how many onboarded you can do. And so, it's the same question as like, what should the quota be for a salesperson, right? It's like, you have to kind of come at it from 3 different dimensions. One is like some sort of like bottoms up time it's possible. You know what I mean? Like to onboard 10 customers a month, let's break that down into how many meetings, how much time, like, does that boil up to a 40-hour work week and a 160-hour month? Like, let's look at that measure. And then it has to come from your business model. Like, what's the gross margin if our CSMs onboard 10 versus 20 versus 30 versus 5? Like, what's the business model say? And then the other piece is like adequate comp, like outside comps, right? Like for HubSpot, like maybe Zendesk was a relatively good comp. I don't know.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So like, there might be some comps we can look up to. So usually I come at it, whether it's what's my sales quota, what's my CSM ratio, what's my account manager ratio. That's how I want to think about it. So can I wrap it up here, Mark? And just
let's wrap it up. Any last things you want to share?
Just a couple of things here. Like, so this whole, like I talked about this. So I have a venture capital firm, the first VC fund running back by go-to-market professionals. That's customer success plus salespeople plus leaders plus marketing leaders. So famous customer success people like Allison Pickens at Gainsight. We've got like Allison Elworthy over at HubSpot, Emmanuel Scala at Toast. Like, these are some of the people that are involved as our backers to help the next generation of folks with their customer success. But this is that ebook that I talked to you about. If you want to go check that out and download it. And of course, you want to see our blog. I know there were some leading questions on when we're going to do more customer success here. I want to do more customer success stuff here, and we will. So if you have ideas on where you want input, we'll build that out. This is the people behind us. And You can check out my faculty page where I publish a bunch of cases on this type of stuff. I'm actually going to write a customer success case on Toast
Awesome.
for our entrepreneurial sales course next fall. And if you ever checked out my book, I do talk about it in there as well. 100% of the proceeds are donated to build.org, and it's no better time for that to happen because they're an amazing nonprofit that helps with this crazy inequality divide that we have to do something about. And it's good to, I mean, it's sad out there, but it's good to see finally some action. So if you do decide to support the book, note that you're supporting an amazing organization that's helping with our current societal issue.
Cool. Well, appreciate it, Mark. This has been fantastic. If you have any questions, I'll send out the slides. I'll send out the recording so everybody has access to everything. And yeah, just appreciate taking the time, and we'll chat later.
Awesome. Good seeing you, Mark. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care.